Just as scholars debate the origins of the war, scholars also debate the reverberations of the war, the consequences of the war. One new element of debate concerns the Treaty of Versailles. Most Germans that I studied considered, and this is the entirety of the population, considered the Treaty of Versailles a punitive peace. John Maynard Keynes, and probably the only thing that I think he wrote correct, and I guess maybe that was wrong, called the Treaty of Versailles the Carthaginian peace, looking back at the destruction that Rome wreaked upon its traditional enemy Carthage after the Third Punic War. And we've long thought, and as I've always thought that when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And as a German historian who studied the 1920s, seeing the repercussions of territorial dismemberment, of the reparations burden placed upon the unwilling German population, I've really seen the Treaty of Versailles as being something extremely punitive. Recently, historians have argued that in fact it wasn't so bad. It was surely less than the peace that the Germans levied upon the French in 1871 after the Franco-Prussian War. That in fact it wasn't quite so bad. I am not yet convinced. I have to read more of that literature, and maybe at some point I'll be able to say, yeah, the Treaty of Versailles, that wasn't so bad. But it does seem to me that it was, at least in terms of the German internal situation, was terrible. The other thing that I've studied to some degree is the stab in the back legend, the Dolchstoß, the idea that Germany was not defeated on the field, but rather that the victorious German army was stabbed in the back by the civilian population, by politicians, by Republican politicians, by trade unions, ultimately by the Jews, who German nationalists felt controlled both of those prior two elements. This stab in the back legend appeared as early as 1919 in a Reichstag commission investigating the German collapse. In a famous testimony of November 1919, retired General Paul von Hindenburg claimed that the German army was victorious in the field, but that it had been defeated by defeatist politicians and the trade unions. The munitions workers' strike in Treptow in Berlin in January 1918 was widely cited as one of the reasons that the German collapsed. Of course, this is really just manufactured. In hindsight, no one could have taken, in November 1918, no one would have thought this was the case. But by November 1919, German nationalists were trying to recover their standing and came up with this legend or myth. It would be one of the most pernicious anti-republican myths in the Weimar era. Weimar Republic President Friedrich Ebert had to defend himself in libel trials over 150 times. He was accused of treason because of his role as a trade union leader and as a politician in 1918. The last trial, the so-called Ebert libel trial that took place in November and December of 1924, I think really resulted in Ebert's death. He was found innocent but guilty of treason. Let's see, the person who libeled him was found guilty of libel, but Ebert was guilty of treason. So exactly how you square that circle, I don't know. Ebert would die in February of 1925. Later in 1925, there was a famous court case, the Dolchstoß trial, that took place in Munich, where an editor of a German nationalist newspaper was sued again, a split verdict where it was decided that yes, the person the the person who claimed stab in the back was guilty of libel, but yes, there was a stab in the back. So just really German legal system craziness. Um, this stab in the back legend continued. It was important in the Nazi movement, in the spread of Nazism. In 1944, 1945, it was one of the things that kept the party and the army in the field. In January 1945, Martin Bormann, the leader of the Nazi Party organization, sent out a memo to local party leaders, to Gauleiter, saying that we will not have another 1918. German generals interrogated in Luxembourg in 1945 after the war constantly said that they did not want to have another 1918. Part of the reason they held on so long was they didn't want to be accused of treason. Hitler and Goebbels were convinced that they must forego another November 1918, of course, with incredibly tragic results. So the Great War doesn't end in 1918. It goes on politically, it goes on economically. It's restarted in 1938. I think what we call the Great War really doesn't end until May 1945. Thank you.